All right, looks like we're live. Gonna give it a minute to try to get the other Facebook stream in here before we jump into this. And as Chad always says, gotta let the stream breathe. So give it a minute. And looks like we are good. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Valley Deep Divers. I'm your host for the night, Erick Trickel. Lance Anderson is out hunting some more since he didn't get anything last time he was out. He's going to go try again. So joining me tonight is my good friend Carl Dumler from building the Broncos. And man, it's always great when I get to jump on here with you and chat and everything. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. It was actually a nice warm day here. I went and did a little sunbathing this afternoon. I'm realizing I'm losing my tan from living the island life there for 6 weeks, and I'd rather not lose that sooner than I have to. And so yeah, I got a little time sunbathing with the dogs, and now getting to have this evening with you, man. It's been a good day.
Yeah, man. I wish I could say the same, but it's been kind of ugly weather the last few days. We had a bad snowstorm yesterday, and then it rained, and that just made the streets really fun. Had to go out and do some shopping today, and that was a mess. But tonight, guys, we're gonna be talking a few different topics. We're gonna be talking about the outlook for the rest of the season, and we're gonna carry that over. And I know this is gonna rub some people's feathers the wrong way, but we're gonna start shifting focus a little bit over to the draft. I mean, I'm Mile High Huddle Senior Draft Analyst. That's my bread and butter. So we're going to start shifting that focus over that way on Dove Valley Deep Divers. And then we're going to end it with a little bit of chat about the Cowboys-Broncos game. I'm sure by now that you guys have heard all sorts of takes about it, and we'll just give some of our quick thoughts on it. But before we get to that, we got to go through our normal matters of business. As you guys can see on the bottom of our years underneath us, you guys can see our Twitter handles. Make sure you guys are going and following us. At Erick Trickel for myself. That is a CK and then an EL, not just a C or a K or LE. And then at Carl Dumler MHH for Carl's Twitter account. Make sure you guys are also following at Dove Valley Deep Divers, the podcast Twitter handle at DVDD_pod. That's where you guys can get access to other stuff. And of course, at Mile High Huddle, which is the mother account, the mothership, if you will, for all the podcasts, all the written content, all the YouTube videos, everything. That's where you guys can go and get that at. And then make sure you guys go visit huddleuppod.com, the merch store. You guys can go get some awesome hats. I believe that there's a Broncos for Breakfast mug in there. I believe there's baby clothing, all sorts of stuff in there. Shirts, sweaters, all sorts of stuff, whatever you guys like. You guys' support there is greatly appreciated. Another way you guys can help support us is going to facebook.com/MileHighHuddle and become a supporter there. It's I believe a little blue button that you guys can go and click on. And for $5 a month, you guys get access to some extra content like Chad's show. I'm not sure what the name of it is. I believe they're reading a book, right? It's a book reading one, I believe. You get access to Kelberman's Corner, where you get Zach somewhat uncensored with his takes. Some of it could be a little bit hot, and I mean, he always likes to bring the spice. And of course, you guys can follow my own, as I almost introduced tonight, actually, as the Trickle Zone on Mondays at, I believe, 1 Mountain Time, when we remember to go live on time. We're still trying to work around the new timing and everything because of some personal issues in my life. Couldn't do it Saturdays anymore, so there's some issues there. So make sure you guys are doing that. And then, of course, whenever you guys go, make sure you guys are subscribing. I mean, this is the easiest way to support the shows. Like the shows and then share them. Word of mouth is a huge benefit for spreading the show around. I mean, just a quick personal story is that where I live, there's a guy who had no idea what Mile High Huddle was. Now he tunes in every so often because my brother actually just spoke about it a little bit. So it turns out that the guy who's speaking with his son's actually a big fan already. So word of mouth, big thing, great way to help us if you guys can't do so financially, which it's understandable. Times are tough for everybody, especially with the holidays coming. So anyways, guys, we're going to be jumping into this. As I said, we're going to be talking about the outlook for the rest of the season. So Carl, starting with you, obviously, with the 9 games remaining, the back 9, how do you think things will go, especially with moving on from Von Miller?
Unfortunately, it's not looking good for the Broncos. There's a couple games that I still like their chances of going out there and winning. The Eagles game, obviously in week 10, good chance to win that one. Not a great team. You got the Detroit Lions, maybe the worst team in the NFL right now, that are sitting there at week 14. The rest of them looking a little tough. I mean, the Chiefs might be the next easiest opponent on the schedule. That's how crazy it is. I mean, just I live in Chiefs Nation or whatever they want to call themselves. And so it's been kind of nice this year where they haven't been able to talk a whole lot of smack towards me because they are just as bad as the Broncos right now. So maybe the Broncos sneak one from them as well. Chargers, I think the Broncos can line up pretty decently against them and stand a good chance. And maybe they sneak another one. Maybe a team overlooks the Broncos looking ahead to the next week, think, hey, this is kind of our easier game. Maybe even the Cowboys this week, because it's an out-of-conference game, not as important as those in-conference games, obviously, or especially in-division games. But right now, I'm thinking maybe 3 to 4 wins tops is what they're looking at for moving forward the rest of the schedule.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I think that the Lions game, I mean, I know any given Sunday, but that's a game that Denver should be able to walk in and win. I mean, Denver, one thing you can say for them is that they have done a good job beating bad teams, and the Lions just aren't a good team. A lot of people like to point to that Ravens-Lions game as how they're better than they are, but the Ravens actually kept that close by dropping would-be touchdowns, shooting themselves in the foot. That kind of is an issue there as to trying to say that the Lions are better than they are. They're really not a good team. I'm with you. I think the Eagles are one that they can possibly go in and win. Those are the two that I would be most comfortable saying they can. But I'm also with you. I think that they can possibly sneak one away from Kansas City simply because there's a lot of issues with Patrick Mahomes right now, and he's openly admitted that he struggles with reading defenses, and defensive play callers are using that to their benefit to confuse him. A lot of cover 2, which is giving them so many issues. There was a great article on The Athletic from Ted Wynn about the Chiefs' issues with that, with cover 2 and even match quarters. So Denver, I think, has a good chance for them. I mean, that defense is one of the worst in the NFL. I mean, Daniel Sorensen's out there on the field, just target him, right? I mean, that's been the way to go against the Chiefs for a while. But before we continue on this, I want to say welcome to everybody in the chat. Travis Weber, thank you for joining us as always. He's saying draft-wise, beyond quarterback, I think Denver should focus on edge rusher and right tackle. Well, we'll get to the draft talk here in a little bit, but I'm kind of there with you. And right now on milehighhuddle.com, there's actually articles up on both edge rushers and right tackles for me, as well as a couple other positions. If you haven't checked it out, that would be a good place to, just go give a quick read while you're listening to us and give in some interesting comments there. But also got to say hello to everybody else that's in the chat. We've got Peter Middleton joining us as always. Peter, it's always great to see you in here. You are one of the people that really shows that Broncos country is not a geographical location, but that it's a state of being. We've got David Bingaman in here. We've got Donald Netanyahu. It's great to see you in here as well. Merlo, Tyler Brooks, seeing you in here. Jeff Noyes. I know we saw Paul I saw Paul's name in here earlier as well. Paul, it's always great to see you in here. You're always one who's always a joy to chat with on Twitter. Black Knight's in here. Hope everything's going well with you and your gaming stuff, Black Knight. I mean, always hoping for success for other people. Shane Daniels comes in. Thank you for the stars from everybody who's also given stars as well. And he says, what in your opinion is one thing that the Broncos can change right now that would make the best impact for the rest of the season? In my opinion, this is one thing that I've talked about privately in the group chat with Carl, Nick, Lance, and James Campbell, but it seems that the defense that Vic Fangio normally runs isn't exactly what they've been doing a lot this year, which some adjustments, sure, that's great, but they've really gone away from the match quarters. That was kind of his bread and butter last year. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that implemented. That's something that really benefits the safeties. Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson both have done a great job at that. And if they're not going to do that, I would like to see them switch what they're doing with the safeties. We're seeing a lot more single high from Kareem Jackson, which isn't his strong suit, than we are with Justin Simmons, coming down as kind of that dime linebacker, that safety in the box kind of thing. And that doesn't fit him either. So that's one big change I would like to see, is just a little bit of stuff with the coverage.
Yeah, something else that I kind of, when I was listening to this game last week, I think it was Stink was the commentator. And he talked about how one of the things that the Broncos have done this year that he just really, really hates, and I agree with it some, is they've really complicated their run game. And he said the best teams running, they have like 3 or 4 concepts that they are just really good at, and they just keep running them over and over again. So everybody gets used to it. Yeah, the other team knows what you're going to do, but when you have the entire offense on the same page, it just makes things run so much better for you. And I do think sometimes they are just running a few too many things. I mean, you're seeing Javonte Williams take some wrong holes. I think sometimes he looks a little bit lost out there. He's making up for it because he's just so good and makes people miss. But that's why you're seeing, I think he has 13% of his carries have gone for 0 or negative plays, something like that. And it's like second highest in the NFL. And so again, yeah, 25%. Okay. But I know he's second worst in the NFL at that.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's one thing for especially a rookie. Simplify. You got a lot of rookies playing both on offense, defense, everything. So the more you can simplify things, I think the better it could be for both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And that was one of the few things. I mean, I don't often find myself agreeing with Stink. Funny story real quick is he actually once called me out on a radio show a few years back when Trevor Siemian was the quarterback. So, but there's not many things I agree with him with. I mean, at one point during the game, he was talking about how Kareem Jackson is the best tackler on the team, yet he's consistently one of the ones missing the most tackles, has a high missed tackle percentage. Like, he's a good tackler, but he's not one of the best on the team. But that was one aspect I agreed with him as well, is there's just too convoluted in the running game, too many different things you want to do, and it's not helping your blockers up front get settled down with one thing. So that is one thing I'm with you there that I would like to see. Now, going on back to this, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit. So you said 3 to 4 wins, right, for over the rest of the season. I think 2 or 3. That's my max. I'm not sure that they can sneak out one against the Los Angeles Chargers, though they do match up well, especially with the Joe Lombardi and his play calling in Los Angeles with the Chargers. A lot of short stuff, not really maximizing stuff that Justin Herbert can do well, and limiting him quite a bit. So that's something they like to play, the underneath game, and Denver matches up well against that. That's what they want to do defensively, keep everything short, come up and make the plays, and then really solidify when the field gets shrunk in the red zone. So possibly, but I think a max of 3 wins here. That would put Denver about 8-9, 7-10, depending on the range we got, which probably lands them somewhere not in the top 10, but probably in that 12 to like 15, 16 range, which is kind of rough as we transition this over to the draft talk, because Travis Weber came in and talked about edges, and there are 3 outstanding edges in this class. And for me anyways, you have these 3, and then there's a pretty significant drop off. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau from out of Oregon, he's going to be up there for the first pick overall. I mean, he's probably the most talented player in this class. I don't know if a quarterback will push for that. I don't think a quarterback should, but hey, it's the NFL. They don't like to agree with me for some weird reason. And then George Karlaftis and Aiden Hutchinson, you can't go wrong either way with them.
Yep.
I like them both a lot. I like Aiden Hutchinson now a little bit more for Denver over George Karlaftis, and I know that Carl, you and I, we talked about that a little bit privately. It'll help quicker turnover for Von Miller, but not picking in the top 10 range really puts it at risk of not being able to land one of these top 3 edge rushers without having to move up. Before I pass off to you, got to get the super chat real quick from Cody W. Thank you for the super chat, Cody. We appreciate that. It says play calling could have this time looking different. The play calling, this is going to give me a lot of fun because Pat Shurmur, his play calls haven't been terrible by any means. There have been some really good designs. There are plenty of issues with him as well. And a lot of it is the timing of the calls and not sticking with certain things that are working. Issues like that, they're very fair in this. The play calling hasn't been terrible, not been great by any means. And a lot of issues with it too is that the poor execution, especially up front with the blockers, is making it seem like that the play was a terrible call. Obviously, that final drive against the Washington football team, like, everybody deserves all the hate they're getting for that. But outside of that, I mean, it wasn't a bad game.
Yeah. And even the play calls weren't the worst. I wouldn't put that on Shurmur. You know, I think Teddy Bridgewater should have known if the throw's not open, you just slide to keep the play call going or the clock going. He made a bad decision there. Running backs fumbling, that's not on a play caller. Like he's calling the play that's you're supposed to be running there to make sure that they use their timeouts. It just everything fell apart execution wise on the field. And I'm with you. There have been some play designs where guys are wide open. That he has really schemed things well to attack a certain defense and what they're trying to run. I'm with you also. Just there's times where the timing of the call of, especially like those second and long plays where he's like, okay, let's run the ball right up the middle. Those drive me crazy because it's just pretty much guaranteed. Okay, now you've set yourself up for a third and long play. Instead of having 2 opportunities to go for a first down, you've only got 1. That's one of my biggest issues of everything that he does out there. And then there are those times where, again, like I said, he just makes things a little too complicated, and it just he can't get out of his own way sometimes. But I did want to say thank you for the stars here, Claude Riley, with the blue and orange hearts. Go Broncos! Really appreciate that. Always good to see, and yeah, no matter how the team's doing, that's the one thing we can continue to say. Go Broncos! And of course, we got Cody W coming back in with another super chat. Cody, you are a superstar. Really appreciate that. If going around 12th, we definitely need O-line. It's up there. I agree. I mean, and the nice thing is, as we're kind of transitioning here into this draft conversation, the strengths of this draft line up well with the weaknesses of the Broncos, other than quarterback. Okay, let's just take quarterback off the table there. But there's some really, really good offensive tackles in this draft that I think a lot of people are going to, the more that they watch them here in college, are going to really like. And really, this 2022 class, I think a lot of people are going to like a lot of it because last year's draft was one of the weakest. It was one of the shallowest drafts that we've seen in a long time, partly because, half of college football got canceled and guys just were not getting the opportunities that they usually have. You had the extra year that they were given. And yes, Peter Milton, I did see that Trevor Siemian will be starting this week for the Saints. How crazy is that? But again, so that means this 2022 class, there's a really good chance this could be a very special class. It's why, again, I really love the trade that I think is a little bit underrated in trading Vincent for a 6th-round pick. A 6th-round pick might be worth about a late 4th, early 5th round pick in this next draft compared to the 7th round pick where they took him.
Now, I don't know if this has actually been covered with that Kerry Vincent Jr. trade. I've seen a lot of hate on that because they drafted him to be part of the future and now they're moving him. But the thing is that they have Michael Ojemudia coming off of injured reserve. They've got Hassan Bassi coming off of the PUP list, and they like both those guys more. Kerry Vincent Jr. was going to get waived, and he probably would have just been claimed off of waivers. So they get a higher pick from going from a 7th to a 6th, and for a guy that they could have potentially lost for nothing. So, it's a move that I get the complaints because, hey, this was a guy that a lot of people liked. He was looking well in the preseason, but he never played in the regular season, and they were about to lose him for nothing. Chill Guy came in with actually a really good comment that I want to grab real quick that says, any good scheme fit O-linemen in the draft? Well, that's the issue with talking about the draft this early. I think that everybody's now expecting that Vic Fangio, Pat Shurmur, basically a major change on the coaching staff. What scheme are they going to be running on both sides of the ball? We don't know. So we can't really talk about scheme fits at this point. We can just talk about player strengths and weaknesses. And then after January, when we get a new coaching staff in there, get the idea of what the scheme's coming in, that's when we can really break it down to like, okay, this guy makes more sense than this guy because of the scheme fit here. Right now, it's a little bit difficult to do that. There was one thing that you said about the offensive lineman that I want to go on is like, there are so many options on the offensive line, especially at tackle this year. Evan Neal is the top guy for many people. For me, the more I watch him, the more like, I don't want to say I'm falling off of him, but the more concerns I see in his game overall. I really like Charlie Cross, I believe out of Mississippi State. I always get it confused if he's from Mississippi State or Ole Miss for some reason. And then the Ekwonu from North Carolina State. terrible with schools. Been trying to get them all down, but still a little early for me for that. So many players that I'm going through, but really good tackle class. And one thing too with this offensive line, the Broncos offensive line, is that it's just not at tackle where they need help. They do need some help on the interior. Graham Glasgow is likely gone. Dalton Reisner will be entering his final year next year. Quinn Miners, Natani Moody, will they be able to develop and grow? There's a lot of questions about the depth that we're already seeing. Dalton Reisner's play has been hit or miss this year. So they could be looking on the interior. And one thing that I was talking about with Nick before, and obviously he's going to bring it up because of the Iowa connection, but if Denver goes to a outside zone heavy scheme, this Shanahan type system, Tyler Lindenbaum makes a lot of sense for the Broncos, especially early. I mean, like, I hate taking the center that early, but Lloyd Cushenberry's just hasn't taken the steps forward you want. He's been okay, but not what you want to see from a third round pick. And so you can look at upgrading there and just continue to build the roster. But I mean, again, as you said, there's plenty of options at multiple places. Travis Weber, depending on who is running things next season as the trust front office and who are head coaches, do you see Peyton going all in for Rodgers, or do you see Teddy here another season? Didn't really want to talk about Aaron Rodgers with everything that's going on. But my thinking is there's been a lot of smoke from Benjamin Albright and a few others that have been pointing at possibly like a Dan Quinn hiring, which I know is going to ruffle a lot of feathers, but I don't hate that idea. Simply to go after a Russell Wilson. The word is going around is that Russell Wilson really wants to be reunited with people who are pals of his, like Dan Quinn or Darrell Bevell, which I hate that idea a lot more than Dan Quinn. But that's something there. I think that they will look at the veteran market for trading for a guy. Maybe Matt Ryan's in there. I don't know. But I think that's their plan. And then obviously we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe they fall short. A lot of few other teams, the Eagles, are said to be willing to go all in. They have multiple high first round picks. A lot of variables in play, but I think that they'll be looking at a veteran quarterback.
Yeah, I think this is the Von Miller trade. In big part was to try to get some ammunition in case you want to go after a quarterback. I mean, it's nice having those 2 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks. You got a few things you can actually do now. You can still have a draft and bring in a quarterback. It just sets up nicely. And so I would guess probably Russell Wilson would be their top choice of the veterans that they're wanting to go after. Probably not Watson, Wilson, probably then Rodgers. And all of this is going to depend on price. George Payton has shown that he's kind of like the Vikings of he wants the deal to favor him. He's not going to make the trade unless it favors his side of things. And unfortunately, you've got other teams that like to get just pretty darn crazy and are willing to trade just about anything and everything just to make the splash play. And so there might be a chance where he misses out. And then that might be where you bring back a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, where he's willing to take less money to stay here with Denver because he likes Denver, likes the players. And then maybe you're looking at the draft and saying, okay, let's take a guy that we absolutely need for an edge or offensive tackle there in that 12 to 16 range. And maybe that's also where you look at quarterback. I know that I'm not going to have probably any quarterback rated that high, but as long as they're not like trading up to like a top 3 pick to take a guy in this draft, I guess I could live with it because you got that 5th-year option. You can surround the guy with talent. You know, it's kind of like Mac Jones last year. If you're taking him in the middle of the first round, I can be okay with it because he's a good player. You can do enough to surround him with talent to win. I just didn't like him as a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I agree there. I mean, top 15, top 20 for these quarterbacks, like, it'll be rough for me. As long as it's not top 10, I can live with it, especially depending on what other moves they make throughout the rest of the draft. Ideally, I mean, they're able to move down. I'm a huge proponent of always trading down. Always, like, accumulation of draft picks, more darts to throw. I'm a big believer in that kind of philosophy. But if they're picking 12 to 16, like, okay, depends on what quarterback. There are a couple quarterbacks that I still wouldn't touch there. Sam Howell, no way. Basically, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, and Carson Strong would be the only 3. And with the concerns about Carson Strong with his medicals, I mean, maybe not even there for me, but without having access to that information, it's hard for me to say. Alan E came in with a $4.99 donation. Thank you, Alan. We appreciate that. He says, any good scenarios where we could beat Dallas? Yeah, I mean, I think that the whole any given Sunday thing, I mean, it seems unlikely Denver will go and beat Dallas, but any given Sunday, you never know. And we don't know. Dallas could very well be overlooking the Broncos. They've been playing poorly. They've been losing to good teams, great teams, and they could just overlook that, like, hey, this is an easy game, and then the Broncos come out and smash them in the mouth. Don't see it happening, but hey, it's a possibility that it can.
Yeah. Well, and Dak, it sounds like he's going to play, but he's banged up. So maybe something happens there where he's just not playing to quite his full potential of what he's been showing this entire year. Maybe you catch a couple breaks with some turnovers. You know, that's why, again, any given Sunday, because just one play can turn everything. The momentum all of a sudden turns. Broncos score early, and, the town I'm living in, they're in the state playoffs right now. Well, last week, I had kids here at my job asking them about the game, and they're like, oh, we stand no chance in this game. This team beat them like 52-0 earlier in the year. And they're going, yeah, this is the end of our season. And then they won. They actually went out there and won. They started off good. They just had a couple plays that went their way early on, and boom, they started believing, hey, maybe we can win this game. And that happens in the NFL. Sometimes you just get hot early and things go well. But all right, well, we got Naj coming in here with a $19.99 super chat. Really appreciate that, Naj. Always good to see you here in the chat. Hey, bros, this is the first game I feel really good about the Broncos. See, there you go. Heavy underdogs, Vaughn traded. Everyone's saying Fangio is gone and season is over. If this doesn't galvanize this young team, nothing will. I think it will. Yeah, like we said, and maybe that is where Vaughn being gone, everybody looked to him. Maybe some of the younger guys say, okay, this is my opportunity to step up and be the man to, Justin Simmons. Maybe he becomes a bigger voice in the locker room. Cortland Sutton, some of those guys, maybe Teddy Bridgewater gets a bigger voice or something. Sometimes this is what takes it to another level for a team. The Raiders, how much have they overcome this year? And they keep finding ways to win games and play well as a team. So sometimes it is those kind of things that make a team go, okay, now it's on us. We're all in this together.
Yeah, and one thing with this team is that they've known their issues. They've done a good job, the players have, of speaking about all the issues they have and wanting to go out there and fix it. So they still have that desire to go and improve and do better, which, of course, you want to see that in all players. The issue is that they haven't gone out there and executed, and that's what's got to change. If they can go out there, execute, and do their jobs, this team would look quite a bit better than they are. But we just haven't seen that yet. Maybe trading Von Miller was that thing of like, oh, crap, like we really got to go and turn this around. We've got to make up for the loss of Von. Like maybe that is that spark that this team needed to put it all together. Maybe it happens. We'll find out here in a couple days. But Naj, I mean, I love the positivity there, man. Like, it's great to see, especially with how much negativity there is in Broncos country anymore about so many different things. It's great to see the positivity there. Cody W comes with a $5 donation, says, what about getting another guy like KJ Hamler in the draft? Another guy with his speed would be nice. Hamler comes back, but is he going to be the same guy? That's actually a good question. And there's actually some concerns about the full extent of his knee injury, because I know there was the tear there, but there's been a lot of comments about how there was a lot more damage done, that he might not be back until mid-late next season. And so there's a lot of questions about it. And this offense is very clearly missing that speed to help open things up. So it's definitely an option. I haven't done a lot of work on wide receivers in this class, so I don't know options there. I don't think they would go super early for one, but I mean, this class has to have some good options to help bring that speed that they need.
Right. Well, and you think there's a good chance they're probably only keeping one of Cortland Sutton or Tim Patrick in the offseason. I mean, maybe there's a chance they bring them both back, but so that leaves a wide receiver spot open. KJ Hamler, like I said, is he going to be the same guy even if he does come back? And he's been banged up a lot. Like you always kind of got to know he's probably going to miss 2 or 3 games a year at least, just because of his body type. And I mean, those speed guys, it doesn't take much to tweak a hamstring or something like that. They are just so tightly wound in the sense of everything just is built perfect to maximize that speed. And when you don't have that, it makes you fall off a cliff. I mean, that's why you see cornerbacks fall off a cliff. Speed wide receivers fall off a cliff. Like there's certain positions that you just know they're going to just fall off a cliff real quick for you. And so I really wouldn't mind them using a mid-round pick on a wide receiver to really maximize and spread out that offense, especially if you get a quarterback that can take advantage of it and make defenses have to respect it. I mean, that's a big part of what's really helped the Raiders offense take off this year. And I know we don't really want to talk too much about that guy, but he will be a huge piece missing for them moving forward because if we're just talking offensive output and what he could do, teams had to respect him over the top. I mean, I think he's had every one of his touchdowns in the NFL have been like over like 30 yards or something like that, 40 yards, I think, or maybe 25. I can't remember. But I mean, it's not like they're red zone touchdowns every single time because teams have to respect that deep ability. And the Broncos are missing that. And so teams are able to creep up a little bit more each time.
So going back to the draft and everything, I mean, obviously the Von Miller deal, getting those 2 extra top 100 picks, based on the Broncos roster now and future upcoming free agents that they have, what positions outside, I know we talked about edge and offensive tackle, what other positions do you think would be high up priority list for the Broncos?
Well, linebackers got to be up there. I mean, Jewell and Johnson are both free agents after this year. So, and they're both coming off of injury. Do you really want to re-sign either of those guys? Sternad, he's been pretty bad this year. He's not what you quite hoped for in the draft. And obviously losing the green dot to a rookie, not a great sign. I know part of that's just he's just not a great communicator, but it still kind of shows the lack of leadership that he's going to bring to the team. And Baron Browning, I mean, he made some great plays. He was still a step late on some things, but obviously you see the athleticism. So you see the potential, but it's still a position that needs more of an influx of talent. And a lot of those second, third round guys, a lot of times you see those guys really show well, both in special teams and on the field. So I could see that being a position they look at. Cornerback, Callahan gone, Fuller gone. So now you're kind of stuck with Darby and Surtain, which, I mean, both those guys are good. And then you got some other young guys that you kind of like and have some potential. But I could see cornerback, another group that, obviously we know Peyton is coming from a place that loves cornerbacks and loves taking them higher. And it doesn't matter if you need a cornerback, I'm going to take a cornerback. So I could see that being another position that they really look hard at. And interior offensive line, you already kind of hit on it earlier with the guys haven't played up to the potential. And a couple of them could be gone after the season. Cushenberry just is not a great fit for what you're trying to do. And like I said, didn't take as big of a step as you needed him to this offseason. He's been a huge detriment to the run game taken off, where other guys actually get pushed on some plays, and all of a sudden Cushenberry's getting pushed back, and it just blows up the entire play. That's the whole point of the offensive line, where one weak spot can destroy a good offensive line. And so, yeah, all those positions I could see as targets. Tight end even. Noah Fant hasn't played up to his first round potential. Albert O has been good in the times that he's got to play, but he's had 2 injuries now in 2 seasons. So can you really trust him to be your tight end 1? Like Peter Milton's saying here. So Albert O is the tight end 1 now until after the break. I think he's going to keep it over Fant for a while. Hope Fant gets the mental break to support him and that the team will be patient with him. I'm not giving up on Fant. And I think, like I said, Albert O has actually surprised me. I was really mad about that pick when they took him. I think we were all on the show, and I think all of us were going, what are you doing, Denver? Like, this is a Drew Lock pick kind of thing. If Drew Lock's not here, you don't have Albert O on this team. But he's surprised me. He's done a few more things than what he showed in college. And Fant, I think a lot of people are kind of, and I've been on it as well, of hounding on him. He's had a tough year off the field. I don't think a lot of people realize some of the things that have gone on for him. You know, all these guys, they are humans. We have to remember they have lives outside of football, and there are things that affect their game outside of just their physical ability.
Yeah, definitely. And going over that with the linebackers, Cody W came with $2 donation, says bring back one of the two of Alexander Johnson and Josie Jewell and see how Kenny Young plays. Well, Kenny Young's also a free agent after this year. So if they don't want to have linebacker be a big need, then you're probably looking at bringing back two of the three there. And with Baron Browning, I think that you really hit the nail on the head. I mean, there were some issues there, but that was to be expected. This is a guy who came into a starting job basically after playing a total of 49 snaps over the first few weeks. Missed so much time because another player hit his leg, caused a fracture in his leg during the rookie minicamp, caused him to miss a lot of the training camp, and then he had a concussion that missed some time there. So we didn't get to really see much of him anything. He's late getting out there on the field and practicing, and here he is. He comes out there and he played good football. I mean, his athleticism really helped cover up some of his issues with reading plays as they were developing. He's just such an athletic freak that I was able to cover up some of the issues there. But linebacker, I mean, it's one of those positions that they've got to help find an answer for. And this is one that, depending on what scheme they go to, what coach they bring in, that can really fluctuate the priority of being a linebacker. It could be another coach who doesn't have a high priority for linebackers like Vic Fangio, or it could be one who has a high priority for a linebacker. That right there is such a big factor into all of this as well when it comes to that position. And then cornerback, I mean, being able to go out and possibly find somebody to pair and make a long-term duo with Patrick Surtain, that's definitely on the table. With George Payton's love for corners, interior offensive line, I mean, I like to pride myself on the work that I do on the offensive line, and watching this unit just consistently struggle and being pretty consistent from the points of where they're struggling at is hard to watch. And I end up feeling bad a little bit because it's the same few players consistently. And I don't like to, as much as people will disagree with this, I don't like to harp on a single player for so many mistakes. And it's the same thing with Noah Fant. Going on to him, I mean, you hit it again, hit the nail on the head with it. He's dealing with a lot emotionally. I mean, losing his mother just before the start of the season, multiple other issues that are going on. Like, there's definitely got to be something there eating away at him that's carrying over onto the field, and hopefully he can turn it around because he's got tremendous potential to be a great tight end in the NFL despite his issues. And his issues are mostly as a blocker and after the catch. He is still producing quite well for the Broncos offense. I think that's one thing that often goes unnoticed is the receptions are there, the yards are there. It's just not much fight after the catch, not much fight as a blocker. And that's where the things got to change with him. And Albert Okwuegbunam, I mean, I was there with you. I wasn't a big fan of him, but he's really proven me wrong. And I mean, he's done better than I thought he would. And so I've already eaten the crow on that one. Now, there was one position that actually was there on top of my head that I thought of, but I forgot about at the moment. Can't remember what it was.
What do you think about the interior defensive line moving forward?
That's what it was. It's definitely a position that they got to target, and it's one of those that really will depend on what scheme they're going to as to who. Because right now, Shelby Harris, okay, I know he's got those couple blocked field goals. I know he's got a couple sacks here now, but for the majority of the season up until the Browns game, he wasn't playing well. He had only like 2 or 3 really notable plays leading up into that Browns game. And since then it's changed a little bit, but he still hasn't been great by any means. Draymond Jones, dude causes so much chaos for opposing offensive lines, even though it doesn't always show up in the stat sheet. Gets him a little bit more hate than he deserves. Mike Purcell, he hasn't been good. Shamar Stevens been all right. McDelvin Ajim, we've barely seen. So they definitely, I mean, this is a position that takes a little while for them to really get going. So, I mean, it's a good point this year, I think, to invest into another guy on there to try and work with develop. The type of defensive lineman obviously depends, but I mean, going from Jones and Ajim to him, like Marquis Spencer's on there from this last draft. I mean, just keep getting those guys, keep developing, seeing what you can hit, because defensive line's a position that you rotate so much anyways.
Yep.
That you want to keep sitting there having guys in that you're working on developing and keep that rotation going and that rotation strong.
Right. Well, and it's also a position that takes a while to develop itself. I mean, even the top guys, the top 10 pick guys rarely show up as rookies. Everybody's kind of usually after the rookie season going, oh my gosh, this guy's a bust. And then a couple years later going, oh, well, okay, they're actually starting to show pretty well. And so I always kind of look at that position as one, really, you cannot judge it till about year 2 or 3. Some positions, you're going to see it a lot earlier. Running back, usually wide receiver, you can see it pretty early. They might have some drop issues early on, but you can usually tell, are they going to be a player or not? And so, yeah, like I said, each position, you got to look at it a little bit different depending on where they're taken. But we got Dennis Woods coming in here with a $5 super chat. Says, is there another interior position Cushenberry can play if we decide to go after Linderbaum? DB for life.
I don't think so. He's one that watching him play at LSU, watching his issues, especially his issues dealing with strength, I think that he's just best suited at center. It really limits the exposure to one-on-ones. And when he does get exposed to a one-on-one situation from there, I mean, that's when he looks the worst. Maybe you can get by with him at guard in an outside zone scheme, but it's not ideal, I don't think. So it would be a situation of, all right, we're going to use Cushenberry as our backup center going forward, and we're going to have Linderbaum as the top guy here. So it's one that I just don't think that Cushenberry has it.
Right. I'm with you. He'd be more exposed in the run game, especially if he moved over to guard. And I had high potential or high hopes for Cushenberry, and I still think maybe in a pass-heavy offense, I think he could probably still do okay and at least be an average starter in the NFL. It's his run blocking. It shows up in his pass blocking too at times, but I think he's a little bit further in his pass blocking than he is in his run blocking.
Yeah, and Cody W came in with a $2 donation saying, need a running back. Probably let go of Gordon, go keep Williams. I mean, Williams, we've still got 3 years of him after this year. Gordon's a free agent after this. I don't think that they'll probably bring him back. So, I mean, it's one where maybe they're looking at Mike Boone having an increased role. Maybe they're looking at a couple other people. Draft is always an option. Go get a guy late. Go get another cheap veteran. I mean, plenty of options for running back. It's just a position that's just so constantly infused with players that you just shouldn't spend big on it. And that was my issue with the Gordon signing. But hey, the past is the past there. Scott Kennedy actually came up and made a good point too about how Quinn Miners was brought in to push Cushenberry, but he wasn't ready for center. And that's, I mean, it's something that I spoke on so often during the offseason that Quinn Miners was brought in to push him. And he very clearly, once preseason games started, very clearly Quinn Miners was not ready for it. And that's definitely an option. I mean, going forward, I don't think they don't have to go with Tyler Linderbaum. Or go get a center because they can fall back onto Quinn Miners. I like what Quinn Miners showed at guard. I think he looked far more comfortable there. That doesn't mean I wouldn't try and see if he can still grow at center, but I like the fact that you can still sit there and try to keep him working at center, but you actually have guard that you can fall back on.
Right. Well, and I would also add, some of it depends on what you do with quarterback. So if you go a rookie quarterback, I really don't want a guy his first time really starting at center to be the guy that's snapping him the ball. That's having to figure out all of the protection coverages and, all those kind of things. I really like young quarterback paired with a veteran center, or a young center paired with a veteran quarterback. Like, I think you need one of them to be a veteran and one of them to be young, or you could have both be veterans. I'm not trying to say you can't have both be veterans, but I just don't think you can have both be young. And so where Miners plays really depends on the quarterback situation for me. Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I forgot I muted real quick. Forgot to mention this a little bit earlier. But with us about having just over 15 minutes left, just a quick reminder for you guys to go get your stars in and your super chats in, because we are doing another giveaway this month. This time is you guys get to choose what player's jersey you want if you win. Top 5 on YouTube. I mean, so superstars or super chats on YouTube, stars on Facebook. You get your chance to enter. The more you put in, the more chances you get to win. And congratulations to Travis Weber for winning the Pat Surtain jersey. Man, awesome for you, man. It's always great to see you in the chat. Don't see eye to eye on everything, but you always bring a lot of good stuff to the conversation. So again, congratulations on that, Trevor. Have had a bunch of comments about going and getting a real middle linebacker, and I think that there's always comments from Broncos fans about the Al Wilson type. Well, the Al Wilson types are kind of dead in the NFL. I mean, it's just a game that's gotten so more athletic and pass happy that you can't really survive well enough with those types. But Denver does. I mean, we talked about already. It's a position that they do need to go and upgrade a little bit. It's an issue that they've had so many injuries, losing Alexander Johnson, losing Josie Jewell. Like, it's been very problematic for this defense. The Browns, I mean, they thrived just living it through the middle of that Broncos defense without those guys. So getting another linebacker, I mean, that's something that's way up there. I mean, there's not a tremendous amount of talent in this linebacker class from my early looks at it, but there are some. There's a couple guys from Georgia that I really like. There's a Penn State linebacker, Brandon Smith, I believe, that I really like as well. A couple Alabama guys, and there's a Utah Ute there as well. There's probably about 7, I think, linebackers I like before day 3. So, I mean, Denver, they have options with those 2 seconds and 2/3 to go and get some additional help for Baron Browning. And part of this, too, that has to factor in is, as I said, scheme and new coach. But also, where does this new staff, what do they think about Baron Browning, and what do they think what role at the linebacker position do they think that he fits best?
Yeah, I think something to kind of keep in mind with the linebacker position, college football right now, a lot of the top linebackers are under like 225 for weight. Like, that's how the college game is going. And so then that means that spills over into the NFL as it moves forward. You're just seeing a lot more of the smaller, faster coverage guys that you hope can hold up in the run game, that can at least be average in the run game and help in the pass game. That it's just the whole way it's going. And so that, like you said, the Al Wilsons of the NFL that just command the middle of the field and just are coming downhill, making plays. And, Alexander Johnson kind of reminds me a little bit of that, of coming downhill, helping in the blitz. Like that's another area that's really been hurt by his presence being gone. He was the best blitzing linebacker the Broncos had. Now, Kenny Young actually is pretty good in that role. And I think he has the highest pass rush win percentage on the Broncos right now. Now, given it's been like 6 snaps. So it's not anything to read into too much, but I think he can do at least a little bit of what Alexander Johnson did. But you didn't always like having Alexander Johnson dropping back, because he's going backwards. It's bad for the Broncos. And
that's the thing with Alexander Johnson is that's where him being out there on the field hurt the Broncos. He had that great game against the New York Jets in coverage there as well, but he's so inconsistent, and how Denver uses him has to be so specific in coverage because he's just a liability. He's not the smoothest of movers. So downhill, it works fine. I mean, that's where the Al Wilson types, you can use them downhill all you want. It's just they got to be able to hold up in coverage, and Justin Simmons, that's his issues this year. That's the improvements. Travis Weber came in and said DJ Williams was decent too. DJ Williams was actually pretty good in coverage. I mean, it wasn't his best area, but he wasn't bad there. I mean, he wasn't a liability, and he was great working sideline to sideline as well. I mean, he was a very underrated linebacker in my opinion. But I mean, again, you got to go and just be able to get more out of coverages from it as teams. I mean, you don't want to let teams to thrive in the middle of your defense like the Broncos did with the Browns.
So let me ask you a question. Broncos can only bring back one of Jewell or Johnson. Who are you bringing back?
Josie Jewell.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I know this gets a lot of flack all the time. Every time I say it, Josie Jewell's the better linebacker. I mean, he's not as good as a run defender as Alexander Johnson is, but he's not much worse. He's actually the better blitzer when you look at the advanced analytics, when you look at the run rates, win rates, and pressure rates and all that. Jules actually has the advantage there. And he's much better in coverage. And that's the big factor for me, is just how much better he is in coverage. Far more instinctive, just so much improvements there from Josie Jewell over the years. I mean, instincts that can carry so much weight for a linebacker in coverage. And so, yeah, Josie Jewell's the guy I would go.
Yeah. Well, and also add in, I mean, he was the guy with the green dot.
Yeah.
He was commanding the middle of the field there for the Broncos. And that is a huge advantage to have. And that's something that they just haven't found a guy to communicate like he did there in the middle since he went down. Johnson was decent at it. But especially once Johnson went down, you just saw this of guys looking confused, guys looking lost on the field, and just being late where they're trying to get. And that's why you saw, especially in that Browns game, the linebackers were just going crazy, going overreaching on the play. And then that backside was open every single time because they're trying to figure things out. And then when they figure things out, they just take off as fast as they can, trying to get to the hole, forgetting to stay disciplined in what they're doing in their pass rushing lanes or run blitzing lanes or whatever you want to call it. They just didn't do well with that. They did better this last week, so hopefully they'll get better as the season wears on. And but it's still, I think you're really missing that with Josie Jewell.
Peter Milton says, should DJ Williams start from now on? Cheaper than Purcell and playing better. I'm pretty sure you mean Deshaun Williams. And I actually went and talked about how they should look at making that switch because Mike Purcell, he is one who does a lot better when Alexander Johnson and Josie Jewell are behind him because he can be far more aggressive. He doesn't have to eat the space and eat up blocks to help out the linebackers. He could just attack because Jewell and Johnson can do such a good job as to getting by the blockers and sidestepping them or going through them to get to it. Deshaun Williams does a little bit better eating the blocks and eating up space. And so, yeah, I think that Deshaun Williams should be. I mean, he's a bigger benefit to the linebackers behind him.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree completely with that. And so, yeah, moving forward, we'll have to see. So much depends on the new coaching staff of who fits well, who doesn't fit well. That's always the problem when you make this change is players that were maybe great players in the old scheme, maybe not as great a fit in the new scheme. And so it's hard to really speculate what this team's going to be in 2022 until we get that idea of the coaching staff. But we have Ship Jumper coming in here with a $5 super chat. Really appreciate that. Says, why are folks asking for Drew Lock over Bridgewater when Lock proved last year in 13 games he was only worth 4-9? And Teddy already has 4 wins midseason. Well, I think part of it is people would argue Lock could have won those 4 games. And I'm not completely disagreeing with that by any means. I think some of those games for sure, they were worse teams than the Broncos. And maybe Locke sneaks one maybe against the Browns where Teddy struggled in that one because he wasn't 100%, those kind of things. I think people are still just, they're hung up on the unknown. Locke is more unknown than Bridgewater. They like the big arm. They like the swag. They like the big plays that happen every once in a while, all those kind of things. And so they're still clamming for some of that. And when the offense is not doing great this year, I mean, it's doing a little bit better than what they did last year in a lot of areas, but at the same time, it's still not great. And so a lot of people, I think, are kind of at that point of going, well, why don't we just put Locke out there? The season's kind of lost. Might as well just make it completely clear this guy is not your future. And I don't completely disagree with that at some point here. I don't think the Broncos are completely out of it yet. I mean, at 4-4, they're in the hunt. They're only, I think, a half game out of the playoffs right now. And so I don't think you completely throw the season away yet. You sneak one against Dallas, well, then you're starting to feel pretty good because you got Philly the next week. And then all of a sudden you're sitting at 6-4. I think this will be a big week for the Broncos. If they can find a way to beat the Cowboys on the road, then all of a sudden it really changes the whole dynamic of what this season's looking like. But right now, yeah, I mean, until the Broncos are out of it, I don't think you're going to see Drew Lock.
Yeah, Travis Weber came in with the season Shelby Harris has had. Do we see him gone next season? No, he's still under contract. He signed that 3-year, $30 million deal. We'll see him through next year at the very least. After that, maybe Denver decides to move on, but with that contract, I'm pretty sure it's not super hard to move on from him, but I don't think it's super easy either. Depends on how much money they want to eat, of course. I mean, it could be a situation where they just feel the new coaching staff feels, hey, it's worth it, but we'll definitely see about that going forward. Just a quick reminder, you guys, before we jump out of here, we're going to be switching over to the Denver game or to the Dallas Broncos game. So any comments, any questions, make sure you guys get them in with your super chats and your stars to help you guys enter that chance to win that player jersey of your choosing. Now, with this Dallas game, obviously that both of us have our doubts. I think we both picked Denver to lose. Now, what's besides the quarterback position, what's your biggest concern with the Cowboys going up against this on offense, going against this Denver defense?
Well, I mean, Dallas has so many playmakers, and right now the Broncos losing Callahan, that's a bigger blow than people realize. He was playing pretty outstanding football this year. I think because his name's never called, a lot of people are like, well, he's not even doing anything on the field. No, that means he's doing his job. They're not targeting him. They're going after Fuller. They're going after Surtain. They're going after the safeties. They're going after the linebackers. They're not going after Callahan. And so I think that'll be a tough blow for them because the Cowboys can really mix and match their weapons and they can have them in the slot. And losing Callahan out of the slot, that's going to hurt. So that part worries me of just how they can really match up against the Broncos that way. And then defensively, I mean, obviously they're playing above what anybody thought their talent would be this year. And they have the ability to really get after the quarterback. And right now, obviously, the Broncos offensive line has just not been great. And you lose Garrett Bowles for this game. And Massey, good luck out there as well. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong with them getting after Teddy Bridgewater. If the offensive line can hold up, if they can actually play their best game of the season, I think the Broncos can do a little bit of damage, can make the Cowboys sweat it out a little bit. And like I said, if you can get actually playing with the lead early in the game, then all cards are off the table at that point.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing is, speaking specifically with that defense and their pass coverage, I mean, Micah Parsons has been huge for their pass rush up front. His play as a blitzer, his play downhill when he's in the box has been tremendous. But when he's working in coverage, there is a little bit of a weakness there that maybe the Broncos can find ways to exploit. You just got to try to stay away from, Trevon Diggs. Going over to the offense side of it, talking about the loss of Bryce Callahan. And obviously that's a loss. I mean, he was the best corner for the Broncos this year up until the point he got hurt. Patrick Surtain not super far behind. I mean, Patrick Surtain hasn't been bad by any means. But I think that losing him, I'm going to be interested to see what they do going forward to try to replace him. Obviously, they talked about Kyle Fuller there, Nate Hairston. I wouldn't mind seeing them using that injury as a way to try to be a little bit more confusing with their coverages for opposing quarterbacks. But the issue with that is you don't want to try to be too confusing to where you end up confusing your own players and what they're doing, because that leads to broken coverages. So that's something that I'm with you there. That's the one area that I think that is the concern for this defense, is they just have so many potential playmakers, so many weapons for Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's back. I still think they would win with Cooper Rush. I just feel a little bit better about Denver's chances. Right. But it's definitely a concern that they match up. They're able to attack where the Broncos are weak at, just so well. And it's one that they've got to win in the trenches on both sides of the ball if Denver really wants a chance to come away with this one. Travis Weber says, will we see Surtain mainly covering Lamb? I don't think so, because I believe that the Broncos corners are pretty much their side. They don't follow. So the receivers, I'm pretty sure on that. I'm 90% sure on that anyways.
Every once in a while they will do a little bit of matchup stuff, but for the most part, they do like to leave their guys on their sides. Darby on the offense's left, Fuller on the offensive right, or Patrick Surtain on the right, depending on which one's starting. It'll be Surtain, but when they go to three cornerbacks, I know they talked about Surtain moving to that slot position. I'm a little bit against that. I'd rather see Surtain on the outside, obviously, because of his size and ability to really muscle up and use the sideline to his advantage. And I like Darby in the slot some. He did a little bit of that with Washington, and I thought he held more than his own when he went into the slot. And so I think he could do a little bit better if the Broncos ask him to do that, but it doesn't sound like that's what they want to do. So it'll be interesting to see how they play when they go to a three cornerback set of who's on the inside, who's on the outside.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I mean, and looking at CeeDee Lamb, he seems to be not super even, but they definitely like to move the receivers around. He's played 200 snaps on one side of the formation and then 150 snaps on the other side of the formation as the boundary wide receiver. A little bit working in the slot as well. Dallas's offense, Kellen Moore, he just does a good job to try to find the best matchup for his receivers that they can win, and so they're just going to move them around until they find those advantages and they're able to exploit them. Before we get out of here, Cody W with a $2 donation says, "Do you feel Teddy is 100% though?" Not against the Browns. Now I still don't think he's 100%, but I don't think he's far from it. And I know this is going to get a lot of flack, but the Broncos' decision with the quarterback position with that Browns game clearly shows what they think of Drew Lock, and the whole thing of it being even Steven, like that's clear that was BS.
Yeah,
it wasn't, because if it was even Steven, Drew Lock would have played that game, and
right.
I think he should have. I don't think that was a game where you should have trotted out Teddy Bridgewater, but hey, alas, that's what they did. So that speaks loudly, anyways.
Yeah.
Chip Jumper came in with another $5 donation. Says, if the Broncos pass rush can contain Prescott and the secondary can cover, the Broncos can win. The Cowboys defense isn't that great. The funny thing about the Cowboys defense is that Trevon Diggs is the league leader in interceptions, but he's also the league leader in yards allowed. He's such a boomer bust corner, but he's got those interceptions, which just makes it like, all right, you don't really want to try to attack him and everything. And I think with Teddy Bridgewater, with the questions about his arm, that's not something that you want to do. The Dallas defense, I mean, where they're best at is actually, or worse at, actually is a little bit beneficial for the Broncos, because they do struggle a little bit with that shorter passing game, and they do well for the most part taking away the deeper stuff. At least in the little bit I've watched them, I haven't been able to do tremendous breakdowns because NFL Game Pass is absolute garbage right now.
Don't get me
but
started.
anyways, so it's a possibility that we could see that. Would like to see Teddy Bridgewater be more aggressive than he was against the Washington football team. He started to be a little bit more aggressive there towards the end, but that second half, that start of it, I mean, it just was not pretty. Just going away early from his reads downfield to taking the check down, which, hey, if you go through your reads and you take the check down, no issue there. It's the issue becomes is when you're not making those deeper reads and you're just going to it. Sometimes pressure did play a little bit of a factor into that, but not consistently enough to be like, okay, yeah, that was the issue. That was the first game. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this as well, but that was the first game that was really the case with Teddy Bridgewater. So, I mean, maybe this short passing game is can be decent against the Cowboys defense.
Yeah, and I'd say the Cowboys defense is underrated. Like, they don't have a lot of big names throughout their defense. They got a couple big names, obviously, taking Parsons in the draft and Trayvon Diggs, like you said, leading the league in interceptions. But they're kind of, as a unit, they do well playing together. And their coaching staff has done well of maximizing the talent there. But we got Mr. Stu Meat coming in here right at the end saying, how's it?
Hey, Stu Meat, it's great to see you in here. It's been a while since we've seen you on Dove Valley Deep Divers, man. Always great to see you guys see returning faces, especially when it's been a while. Travis Weber comes in and says, Denver will get to see what kind of coach Kellen Moore will be as a hopeful head coach candidate, crossing fingers. Everything seems to be that basically Jerry Jones is going to give him a head coach type contract to take over for Mike McCarthy, probably after next year. So something to be watch out for. I would love Kellen Moore as a coach. I just don't see Jerry Jones being willing to let him go.
Yeah, and unfortunately, he has enough money that he can just throw it at him and say, here, stay here. We will pay you as much as you possibly want to stay here. And also, I mean, the other thing to keep in mind, this is where the quarterback situation in Denver just hurts them so bad. I think it hurts them more than the ownership situation with getting a head coach. When coaching candidates are looking at the Broncos, they're saying, what do you got? Like, there's nothing here. What are you going to do for me to make sure that I have a quarterback that can actually give me a chance to succeed? Because especially in the AFC West, when you got three great quarterbacks on the other teams that are probably all playing all at top 10 levels this year, well, maybe not Mahomes. The one that surprises me that should be playing at a top 10 level. But yeah, so with that missing, Kellen Moore might be like, I got Dak Prescott here. I got a bad division that I'm playing against. I've got some really good opportunities. And so I wouldn't blame him for staying, but hey, maybe he really does want that opportunity to lead right now, doesn't want to wait. and maybe considers the Broncos. So fingers crossed, because I do like him. I like what he does on offense, especially. He does well to set up his quarterback and to use his weapons well. But we'll just have to see on that in the future. We got Joe Spath coming in here with some stars. Really appreciate that. And Nathan Tala as well coming in here with some stars. Everybody, you guys have just been the best tonight. And just really appreciate all the support and questions. I mean, this has been a great conversation and really on point with pretty much everything of what we wanted to talk about here tonight. And so it's just been really cool to see that. So again, appreciate all of you guys being a part of that. And Eric, always appreciate getting to have this chance to talk with you, man.
Hey, Michael Ronquillo joining in late with some stars. Thank you, Michael. It's always great to see you in here. I don't think I saw you earlier, but hey, at least you showed up here at the end. And of course, you can always go back and watch it. We're on iTunes, we're on Spreaker, we're on Spotify, all sorts of different platforms that you guys can go back and listen to, as well as just watching the live show back on YouTube. Anyways, guys, before we get out of here, make sure you are following myself and Carl on Twitter at Erick Trickel, at Carl Dumler MHH. This is, of course, the Dove Valley Deep Divers, and you can follow the Dove Valley Deep Divers Twitter account at DVDD_pod. And make sure you guys are following the Mile High Huddle mother account at Mile High Huddle. That's where you get access to all of the podcasts. You get access to all of our written content, all of our YouTube videos, everything as well. And of course, youtube.com/Mile High Huddle to go and subscribe there for all the YouTube content from there. Make sure you guys, if you can, go check out the merch store at huddleatpod.com. All sorts of stuff, shirts, hats, cups, all sorts of Mile High Huddle gear. I believe the bumper stickers are on there, which if you guys were at the meet and greet, you guys have that. You can actually see it a little bit over the back of my head. The Mile High Huddle bumper sticker there. Bunch of great stuff you guys are able to. If you guys also facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and click the little blue button to become a supporter. You get access to Chad's show, Kelberman's Corner for some of his spicy takes, and the Trickel Zone that's on Mondays at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. Lately talking about just breaking down the game. So make sure you guys are doing that. And if you guys can't support the show financially, which, hey, I understand, times are tough. I mean, with everything going on in the world, and especially with the holidays coming in, can't always, support financially, which, hey, Christmas time, great time to give up some Mile High Huddle swag as Christmas gifts too. But you guys can subscribe, like, and share. Sharing is one of the best ways to, by word of mouth, through Twitter, whatever the case may be. It's always one of the best ways to help grow this show. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. I mean, it's been a wonderful, as Carl said, it's been a great chat. I mean, been flowing, not as toxic, which I know I did a good job of not contributing to that as well, but always great to chat with you, Carl. Do you have any last words before we get out of here?
No, just excited for the game, and maybe the Broncos go out there and surprise the world and have everybody going, what in the world, who is this team? And maybe it's just the young talent finally starting to come together and figure some things out. And like I said, after that, you got the Eagles get a chance to get back on track. Maybe then you get back Bradley Chubb after the bye week and get a little bit of a pass rush going. The season's not completely lost yet, everyone. So let's hold our horses, pun intended, and just kind of see what happens with the rest of the season. But enjoy the weekend, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this Friday night.
Yeah, maybe the horses can buck the riders a little bit this week and shock the world, as you said. And can you imagine how Broncos country will be if the Broncos manage to do that? It would be insane. But anyway, guys, thank you guys for joining us. I'll be back next week. Maybe Lance will be back. I'm not sure at this time. You guys can catch, I believe, Nick and Luke tomorrow for the Mile High Insiders, as well as Chad's Facebook exclusive show as well tomorrow, I believe, at noon Mountain. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you guys, as I said, next week, same time, same Mile High Huddle Network.